Hey everyone, what's up? This is Uri for Gorilla Poker. In this video I'm gonna do a high stakes hand history review between Viktor Kudinov and Leikkonen, or Zas and Makeboifin as they're known on PokerStars. These are two of the best players in the world right now, so I'm very excited to get into the hands. First hand we're playing heads up, 100-200 blinds. Makeboifin raises the button to 500, Viktor 3 bets big blind to 1800, and Makeboifin calls. And first of all, we'll talk about the sizes just a little bit. So 2.5x raise from the button is within the fine range, right? Anything between 2.2 and 2.67 is probably fine. And anything kind of smaller or larger than that, you need a reason for doing it, in the sense that theoretically it's not optimal. 3-bet size from Zas is fine as well. And you'll notice that different spots like these, people vary their sizes a bit. Each person has his own reasons, and sometimes in a heads-up match you might even vary your size just to see, does my opponent know how to react to it? So for example, let's say Zas has always been 3-betting 5x. And then he says, okay, no, I want to study how 3.6x works, or whatever this is. And he studies it a bit, and then he comes to the table with his preparation, and your opponent's not necessarily prepared. You can think of it like a chess opening. Like, does your opponent understand how his 4-bet range changes, what his flatting hands are, how to play his range post-flop? All these things change. So you can kind of play around, and this gives you a chance to trip your opponent up. And very often at high stakes, when you see these sizing variations, it's tough to know, like, why would you vary your sizing from a theoretical perspective? Nothing has changed about how you understand this spot, presumably. So there's a decent chance it's an attempt to get a leg up on your opponent. Okay, so 4-7-8 rainbow board. Actually fairly good board for the 3-better heads up, even though it might not look like it, but I think it is, because the 3-better 3-bets tons of suited connectors, and the caller tends to call all the offsuit Broadway stuff in heads up. So 10-9, Jack-10, Queen-10, Queen-Jack, all these things, and they actually all miss. So yeah, Viktor goes 1/3 pot. A lot of guys do this with their full range or near to it. Yeah, I think the idea we've discussed enough. Makeboifin makes a small raise. This is a board where his range is going to be more nutted, so he gets to have a raising range, and Viktor calls. Now, the idea behind the small raise, I'd say the main concept for you guys to have there is what's known as SPR, or stack to pot ratio, where there's so little money behind, given it's already a 3-bet pot and there's 3,600 in a pot, that making a huge raise is very inefficient. You get to apply pressure with small raises. You don't need as much protection, there's not as much money behind, draws don't have as much implied odds. So all these things kind of work together to make this just the only reasonable size to raise. And any kind of big raise size would generally be a punt on this kind of texture. It's not connected enough given the ranges. So yeah, turn 8 of clubs. It's kind of neither here nor there. I would say all of the draws missed, all of the overcards missed. 8 now became trips, but really, neither player has an 8 very often in his range, given pre-flop and flop both narrowing the ranges, and I don't know that 8x necessarily does a lot of raising. Makeboifin's going to have some boats if he raised with a set, but less boats than had the turn not come in 8. So yeah, tons of things going on here in terms of the ranges, but it's a fairly bricky card, let's say. So goes check, and we get to the river. River is a 10 of clubs, and Viktor leads out with a 3rd pot bet. And here we always want to interpret, what does this imply about the range that he's betting, which is very important for our reaction. So a 3rd pot range is a thin value bet range. So let's say Viktor has kings here. Kings is not thin at this point, right? When you lose only to traps, your hand is not very thin. So kings should go bigger. Similarly, jacks should go bigger. If Viktor has a 10, maybe this size is okay, but I'd guess a 10 might also go bigger. So I don't know, is this pocket 9s or a 7 or pocket 6s, something like this? It's very important to understand the threshold, so as the opponent you can make the appropriate reaction. And I have not studied this spot enough. Everything depends on how much your opponent is slow playing on the turn, of course, because maybe even a 7 can go bigger. But remember, you're looking to get called by worse, and maybe Makeboifin raised with a 7 or with a 4 or with 5s or 6s or even some ace high, and he's now trying to get to showdown. So yeah, this is some thin value or a bluff. Makeboifin makes the call, and we see a showdown. Zas Viktor has king 7 offsuit, which makes, sense for pretty much everything. Is the bet on the river good or not? It's tough to judge from my perspective. I don't have enough experience. I'll trust Zas that it is. In my eyes, yeah, I would guess it probably is just accurately played. And Makeboifin, raises with the open ender into overcards, checks back the brick turn, which, you need to sometimes check back turns with draws. You can't fire them 100% of the time. And then he hits a 10 on the river, and here is the spot where he says, okay, no way I'm folding this hand. Is it good enough to raise? Very, very iffy, so probably not. Then his hand kind of plays itself at that point as well. So yeah, well played hand by both. Hopefully you guys learned something hearing me analyze that. Yeah, we'll quickly do one more and wrap up the video. Okay, so second hand between these two end bosses. Makeboifin raises to 500. Viktor calls. We get a queen 3-5 two-tone board, which goes check, check. Nothing special so far. Viktor can have his entire pre-flop range. Makeboifin's range gets filtered a bit, so he's going to have a lot less nutted draws, 2 pairs, good top pairs, etc. And his range is going to be a lot more hands that like checking back, which here would be, a lowish pair, sometimes ace high, king high, some hearts or diamonds that has nothing to do with anything. So yeah, his range gets filtered, but if he's playing well, it still has some tricky stuff in there. 10 of clubs turn. Here, Makeboifin can also have flushes, but less than Viktor, right? Because his c-betting range contains a higher proportion of equity, and so higher proportion of flush draws. So this is actually a nice-ish card for Viktor. But Viktor decides to check, and Makeboifin makes a 75% pot-sized bet, implying, this bet size is now saying I have a fairly strong hand. Where's the threshold for this? I would say a queen seems fine. Maybe a good 10 can do this. I wouldn't be shocked. I don't think you can go much weaker. Maybe a 10 with a club or something like that. And yeah, Viktor calls. So, wide range. You could have any pair. You could have an ace high or king high flush draw. Maybe some traps now and then. River 4 of clubs for a 4 flush. Viktor checks, and Makeboifin makes an overbet going roughly 1.5x times the pot. And 4 flushes, very, very unique spots in that it's kind of nuts or air. And easy to have air, just have a jack 9 or jack 8 of hearts. Or you have a high club, right? And Viktor is faced with a bluff catching decision here. He decides to call, and we're going to see the hands. So Makeboifin has king of clubs, 9 of hearts, which I think makes a ton of sense. The flop check back, like we said, nice king high. His hand turns so much equity, it starts having incentive to bet because it's just going to be super strong on quite a few rivers, as we see here. And then river improves to the second nut flush. Given the action, he thinks he can size this big, and I'm fairly sure that's accurate. Remember, ranges and heads up are super wide, so second nut flush in a pot that has 1 bet in is very, very strong, even on a 4 flush board. And yeah, let's look at Viktor's hand. Viktor has 5 of clubs, 4 of diamonds, so pre-flop good, flop good, turn makes perfect sense to check all this hand. And then on the river, you always want to say, is my hand a bluff catcher or something else? And clearly his hand is a bluff catcher, in that he's only beating bluffs, but he's never losing to bluffs. But it's also a really good bluff catcher, because usually there's this kind of blocker interaction thing where your opponent tends to bluff with unpaired non-club hands. So by having the flush along with 2 pair, Viktor kind of unblocks bluffs, so proportionately Makeboifin will have more Jack 9 of hearts, or whatever hand he has that's deemed a bluff. Then when Viktor has something like pocket 8s with a club, or pocket 6s with a club, where the 6 might be in the bluffing range. So I think kind of trivial call in a way this hand plays itself. This is, often we talk about bluff catchers, you can call or fold or raise. I don't think you can fold this hand without a very, very good exploitative reason. It feels like a premium bluff catcher, so to speak. So we will wrap up there. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Always a pleasure to watch End Bosses battle for me. Always something to learn there. And yeah, if you did, please like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time.